All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming out tonight to our SALT Talks. This is part two of our Social Security. Tonight we're going to be talking about work incentives. And for those who don't know who I am, my name is Patty Schramm. I'm the Parent Resource Trainer Coordinator for the SALT Talks. Now, Social Security, we had part one a few weeks ago on navigating Social Security and the benefits. And tonight we're going to look at we'll probably have a review, but we'll look at work incentives and what that means for Social Security. This entire month, we're looking at benefits and services. So next week, we're going to be looking at understanding funding, which is technically like waivers. But we've been looking at, all the different benefits and services that are available. And then next month, we're going to be getting into more of the special needs trust and guardianship uh, presentations and sessions. So with that, I know there's going to be a lot to cover tonight and probably a lot of questions. Again, feel free to put your questions in the chat box and we'll be watching the chat box. And I'm going to turn it over to our speakers tonight. We have Latosha Olinger from Warren County Board of Developmental Disabilities, and then Tammy Disney is from the Montgomery County Board of Developmental Disabilities. And just if you're not from either one of those counties, that's totally fine. Social Security covers, they're more like a federal coverage, but if you have a particular county you're in and you want to connect with somebody in your county, please feel free to ask. Latosha or Tammy can connect you or let you know who to speak with. So if you're not from Warren or Montgomery, that's fine. You just take the basic information and we'll get you connected with who you need to speak with. So with that, is it Latosha or Tammy going first?
Latosha.
Okay, go ahead, Latosha.
Thank you, Patty. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Patty said, my name is Latosha Olinger. I work with Warren County Board of DD Services, and we have Miss Tammy Disney from Montgomery County DD. And we're going to discuss work incentives today. We're also going to just do a short overview of SSI and SSDI benefits for those that did not attend part one. You can go ahead and move this slide, please, Patty. So here's our agenda for tonight. So security benefits, the work incentives that involve with the SSI and SSDI, benefit analysis, and resources. Social Security benefits are administered through the federal government. There's two different benefits that's available. There's Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, or Supplemental Security Income, SSI. Next slide, please. The difference between SSI and SSDI. So for SSI, just keep in mind, it's a needs-based program. It's for individuals who are age 65 or older, blind or disabled. There's a resource limit attached to this SSI benefit, $2,000 for an individual and $3,000 for a couple. And that would be a SSI couple. For SSI, you automatically qualify for Medicaid if you are approved for SSI benefits. When it comes to work income, it will reduce your check, and we'll kind of discuss that a little bit further. The full benefit rate currently for 2025, the most someone could receive is $967 for an individual. And if it's a SSI couple, the benefit rate is $1,450. SSI is usually deposited in individuals' bank accounts by the first of the month. Sometimes it's provided a little bit earlier, depending on when the first falls. Like if it falls on a weekend or a holiday, then they may get it a little bit sooner. And then here lately, some banks are providing early deposits as well. For SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, that is an insurance-based program. So you must have worked and paid into the Social Security system and have enough credits to apply. Or you could, an individual who is disabled, draw off of the parent's work record if their disability occurred before age 22 and they meet the disability qualifications under Social Security rules. The parent must either be retired, disabled, or deceased for the child to be entitled to that benefit. With SSDI, there's no resource limit attached to this at all. Work income could cause a check to stop. It just depends on the SGA limit for that particular year. When it comes to the benefit amount, the amount varies. It really is based on what someone has put into the work system. The Social Security system. And the benefit is usually received on the 3rd of the month or on a Wednesday. It usually depends on the individual's birth date. So now let's get into Social Security work incentives. Social Security work incentives are special rules that help people with disabilities who receive Social Security disability insurance or Social Security supplemental income to work and maintain their benefits and healthcare coverage. These incentives are designed to make it easier for individuals with disability to explore employment opportunities and achieve financial independence. So first we're going to discuss SSI and then Tammy's going to go over SSDI work incentives. So for the SSI program, which is also considered Title 16 benefits, you have the student earned income exclusion, the impairment related work expense, the blind work expense, and then the plan to achieve self-support. So the student earned income exclusion, that's one of my favorite work incentives. This allows a person who's under age 22, regularly attending school, to exclude work in earnings from income. So in 2025, a student can exclude $2,350 per month at a maximum of $946 per calendar year. And I shouldn't say per calendar year, for that calendar year for 2025, because that amount usually increase every year. Information regarding full-time school enrollment must be submitted to Social Security to apply for the SEIE to apply. Regular attending school means a student is either in college or a university for at least 8 hours a week under a semester or a quarter, in grades 7 through 12 for at least 12 hours a week, in a training course to prepare for employment for at least 12 hours a week, 15 hours a week if the course involves shop practice, or in a homeschool situation, grades 7 through 12, for at least 12 hours per week in accordance with the homeschool law of that state in which the student resides. Or for less than the time indicated above for reasons beyond the student's control, so such as illness. And that student earned income exclusion, I mean, it's a really good work incentive, especially for those working students that's just now trying to explore employment. Usually what I've seen in my experience, most of the individuals are not getting their SSI benefits reduced because they're not making that top dollar based on that exclusion. So great work incentive to definitely explore for individuals that's currently on SSI or going to be on SSI before they turn 22. So the next work incentive is called impairment related work expense. We commonly just call it IRWE. This allows a person to deduct from their gross wages the cost of certain items and services they may need to work. These costs of services or items may be deducted from a person's income in the month that the expense occurred. The deduction will reduce the countable income from SSI. So when someone has an IRWE expense, Social Security is going to look at that amount prior to making a reduction in their SSI payment. The expenses do have to meet certain criteria. So it has to be related to the individual's condition or impairment. Um, the the expense must help the individual work. It must be paid by the individual and not reimbursed from another source. So for example, if someone's using transportation and their waiver or another person is paying for that transportation, they could not use that as an impairment related work expense because they're not the one who is paying for that cost. And the expense has to be reasonable. So some examples in addition to the transportation is, if you can scroll up a little bit more, thank you. In addition to the transportation is like co-pays for medications needed to work, job coaching services, attendant care services. Another thing that I didn't put it, sometimes the individual's cell phone bill could be part of that, but it really has to be where they're using that cell phone for work purposes, like keeping track of their daily tasks, reminders to do certain things, maybe to when to come back to and from break. So that information has to be disclosed to Social Security before they would use that as a IRWE. And all IRWEs have to be approved by Social Security. The next one is called blind work expense. It's a little bit similar to the impairment related work expense. This allows individuals who are blind receiving SSI to exclude expenses that enable them to work. The expense can be work related and does not have to be related to blindness. Items or services must be purchased by the worker, The cost of the items or services must be deducted from a person's income in the month the expense occurred. And again, just like the IRWE, the BWE, the amount of that expense will reduce the accountable income from SSI. So when it comes to qualified expenses, here are some examples that's very different than the IRWE. So the cost for a service animal or the cost for the food or upkeep of that animal, transportation to and from work, any licenses or fees or taxes is needed for work, attending care services, meals that is eaten during work hours. So if they're taking a lunch break and they're paying for lunch while they're at work, then they could use that expense as well. Medication, medical or non-medical equipment or supplies, and other related equipment or services. Again, just like the IRWE, the BWE has to be approved by Social Security as well. And usually you have to submit receipts regarding each expense. And if you have an expense that is not a monthly and it's a one-time expense, you would just submit that during that particular month that you pay for that expense. The next one and the very last one for SSI is the plan to achieve self-support, commonly known as PASS. This is a written plan of action for pursuing and getting a particular job or starting a business. A PASS describes the steps a beneficiary will take and the items and services needed to reach an employment goal. So for an example, education, training, assistive technology, or transportation. When a beneficiary have an approved PASS, Social Security does not count the money they set aside to help them reach their employment goal when determining eligibility for SSI. Some key things to keep in mind: the PASS must be approved by Social Security. The goal must be that the job or the employment that they're or business that they're trying to do is going to reduce their dependency on disability payments. The money used to pay for items can be from any source other than SSI. So they can't say they're using their SSI payment to pay for those services and fees. To get information regarding a PASS, you can click on that link there below. There's a PASS application. And also if you need some additional support with pursuing a PASS, you can reach out to us or you can reach out to Social Security as well to get some more information regarding PASS. So now I'm going to pass it on to Tammy, where she's going to share information regarding SSDI work incentives.
Okay. So SSDI is a Title II, and that's just the rule where it comes from in Social Security. And so they do give disability, they give work incentives. So the SSDI and the child dependent benefit. The SSDI is when they're getting the Social Security benefit off of their own work record. So they've paid enough into the system that they're getting a benefit out. The child dependent benefit is when they're getting it off of a parent. So a parent is getting Social Security, either retirement or they're on disability themselves, or a parent is deceased and the individual is getting survivorship. Those are the types of Title II or Social Security disability insurance benefits. So what happens when you're getting that and you go back to work? I mean, you're basically saying that because they need this benefit because they're not able to work and make enough money to pay for their living expenses. Well, Social Security does want individuals to go back to work. There's lots of benefits to working. And so the reason that they decided that they needed to give some work incentives is because if they automatically stop their benefit whenever they went back to work, then nobody would ever go back to work. So they've given some work incentives, and we're going to go over them. And those are going to be the trial work period, or also what people call the TWP, the extended period of eligibility, which is also known as the EPE, the impairment related work expenses, which basically are the same as the ones at SSI. They can be used for SSDI also. And then subsidies and special conditions that they're getting from the employer in order to be able to work. So let's go over the trial work period. So the first thing that they say is that if you go back to work, try to make as much money. Try to make a full-time job. See if you can do it. Nobody would ever do that if their Social Security stopped immediately. So they were giving a 9-month trial work period. And that's where they're saying, while you're in your 9 months of trial work period, no matter how much money you earn, you're still going to get your SSDI benefit. So how do they count the trial work period? So this year, A trial work period is $1,160. If you make that much money in a month, that triggers a trial work period. And that means that they just start counting how many months that you can make, an individual can make that much money. And then so if you made say you made $1,200 this month, that would be considered one trial work period month. You get 9 months of trial work period. It isn't a 5-year or 60-month rolling period. An individual continues to receive their disability checks regardless of how high their work earnings are in those months. So if you trigger a trial work period this month and then next month you go under the trial work period, then it doesn't count. And then in 5 years, they start rolling off. So if you never trigger more than 9 months or your total 9 months of trial work period, then you stay within that trial work period. And so that allows sometimes for individuals to start a job and try it, and then it doesn't work. And then maybe, next year you start a job, try it for a little bit. If it doesn't work, it gives them a chance to see what they can do and how many hours they can work before they have to worry about going over the next thing, which is the substantial gainful activity. All right, this says Social Security will count it for 1620. It's actually 1160. 1620 is what's considered the substantial gainful activity. So 1160 is the trial work period amount. So what happens once you trigger all 9 months of your trial work period? The very next month starts what's called the extended period of eligibility, or the EPE. So for 3 years or 36 months, that individual then is in the EPE, and it starts the month after and it goes consecutively for the next 36 months. Unlike the trial work period where they roll off, these don't ever roll off. Once the EPE starts, it continues for 36 months. And during that 36 months, an individual receives the disability check for any months that the gross earnings are under the SGA level, which is 620, and they do not receive a check for any months that they're over SGA level. So if somebody goes over 1620, they're not due that check for the month. But if they go under it again the very next month, they are due a check. So during the EPE is a very important time to know when you're in it, because there could be a chance where you can take on more duties at work and try to see if you can do it. And at the EPE, you may make enough money to not get one payment, but then you can't do it anymore and you go under again. You can get your check back with no questions asked. So the EPE is just a kind of a safety net of, for 3 years while you're working under the 1620, you can, if you do go over 1620 and you start working for a couple months, it doesn't work out, you can then ask for your Social Security check back because you can't do the job anymore for some reason. Okay, so the work incentives. The impairment work-related expenses are the same as they are for SSI. Certain expenses that you can have deducted, and the only reason you would need to even work these is if the individual is working over substantial gainful activity. So if somebody's only making $1,300 a month, then these don't have to be really worked because they're not going over SGA. But there are some people who go over SGA and they do have to pay for impairment-related work expenses. And then that's when you would then make these purchases and get them approved by Social Security so that when they look at how much income a person has, it can bring their earnings, their countable earnings, under the 1620 for the SGA level. So certain expenses for these you have to be due to their disability in order for them to work. So if it's a pair of gloves because they have some gripping issues because of their disability, that they can say, yes, I paid for that, and that can reduce it. But if it's just gloves that everybody wears, then that's not a impairment-related work expense, and that would not be considered. So these items do have to be purchased by the individual out of their money. Examples could be interpreter services, the personal care services, or transportation costs. And those are things that if the waiver's paying for those things or somebody else is paying for them, they're not considered impairment-related work expenses. But if they're paying for them out of their own pocket, then yes, they can be kind of deducted from their countable income. These costs may be deducted in order to bring the countable income under the SGA level of the 1620. All right, next. Subsidies and special conditions, and these are kind of a little different way of looking at things. So a subsidy is if the employer gives any type of allowance or accommodation for the worker to be successful. Examples would be like fewer or easier duties. So say there's 10 tasks that an individual, a job that they're doing, it's part of their job, but there's 2 of them that they can't do. They can't run the cash register and they can't drop the fries at McDonald's, but they can do everything else. They can, use the microwave and help with whatever, making the sandwiches. So if they're doing 10 tasks, but they can only do 2 of them they can't do, then there's, in a sense, only earning 80% of the salary that they're getting, or because somebody else is doing that other 20%. So that's a subsidy. So other things could be if they allow them to have lower quality of work than others, they give them extra supervision, and a supervisor may need to give everybody, one verbal prompt an hour, but the individual with a disability needs 4 times they need to get a verbal prompt. Then they would look at that as being a subsidy. And the way that they come up with the amount that the subsidy is that they look at what the individuals, like how much time, extra time are they getting. So say that's, 10 minutes is what everybody gets, but he needs 20 minutes. Then they would take 10 minutes of his time frame and of his work pay and say that he's not earning that 10 minutes because he's getting extra supervision. So Social Security has to work that and figure out, because they have to turn it into a monetary issue so that they can say how much the subsidy is basically worth. But they do, it will be something that you can use to get somebody under the SGA level. So special conditions are basically items or services that are provided for the individual that the employer gives them so that they can be successful, such as job coaching, follow along, counseling, or adaptive equipment. So basically they're allowing a job coach to come in and help them. So while they have a job coach with them, they're in a sense really not earning the money by themselves, they're getting help. So that time frame that they're having job coaching, that would be considered a special condition, and the monetary value that they can attach to that then would be deducted off of their SGA. All right. So basically these are all continuums, so that you start out with your trial work period, you got 9 months in a rolling calendar, you trigger it a month here, maybe not the next 2 months and next month, and then within 5 years they start rolling off. So if you never go out of your trial work period, you never go into the extended period of eligibility. But after you hit that 9th month of trial work period, for the next 36 months, you're in your EPE. The EPE is where you can earn up to 1620 and still get your check. But once you go over the 1620, then you don't get your check. But during that 3-year period, if for some reason you end up not being able to make the 1620 anymore, they will turn your check back on, no questions asked, because you're in that EPE. Once you're out of your EPE, however, that's when, if you start working over SGA, then Social Security says, okay, now you're able to make enough money to pay your bills. You don't need your Social Security check anymore. So what happens if you're out of your EPE and you go over and they turn off your check, and then a year down the road something changes and you're no longer able to do that job, then you will have the right to do what's called expedited reinstatement, or EXR. So this is where you then basically ask for Social Security to look at the case again. So it allows that the previously entitled beneficiaries whose entitlement ended due to work to request the EXR, or expedited reinstatement, of those benefits or payments to be returned. A previously entitled beneficiary may become eligible for EXR if their work condition or medical condition no longer permits them to perform substantial gainful activity within 60 months of their prior termination. So once the EPE or their check gets turned off, they have 5 years in order to get what's called expedited reinstatement. So EXR establishes a new period of disability and a new month of entitlement. EXR allows a claimant to receive up to 6 months of a provisional cash benefit. So basically, they'll turn the check right back on while they're making the determination if it's going to continue. And then they will ask for some evidence of what the disability is and evidence that you can show that they can no longer do the job. A lot of times you can have the employer help give some information, or if they have some employment people working with them, they can then have them fill out statements stating, what's changed, why they can't do the job anymore. And EXR is a little easier to get turned back on than if it's full-blown reapplication. Because with EXR, they basically are saying, my disability is still here, and now I'm no longer able to work. Whereas if you do a full-blown application, you're telling Social Security, I can't work, and you have to prove to them that you can't work. With EXR, you just have to kind of prove that your disability is still there, and it's keeping you from working. So the burden of proof becomes a little bit easier with EXR than full-blown reinstatement or application. So the claimant may be eligible for Medicare and Medicaid coverage during the provisional benefit period. Medicare will, at some point, if your Social Security check, the SSDI check stops, Medicare will stop at some point, but they do allow you to keep Medicare for several years because they want individuals to be successful and have medical insurance. But it will, at some point, if you don't get your SSDI check back, it will stop at some point. Okay. So what happens if you're on SSI? Remember, SSI was what Latosha was talking about. You have and it goes up and down depending on how much you're working it. So what happens if you work enough to where you zero out your SSI benefit? Would that affect your Medicaid? Possibly, because with SSI comes Medicaid. However, if the only reason you're not getting an SSI payment is because you are working, there's a program that they have which allows you to keep Medicaid, which is 1619B. And that is no cost Medicaid coverage, which continues even if earnings alone or in combination with other income are too high to receive a supplemental security income cash payment. So what they say is that you're kind of eligible for SSI, but because your work income is so high, you're not going to get a benefit. And because of that, they allow you to do 1619B Medicaid and continue to have free Medicaid, even though you may not be getting an SSI cash payment. So to be eligible for 1619B, the individual must have been eligible for SSI cash payment for at least 1 month, still meet the Social Security disability requirement, and meet the Medicaid needs or use test, which means basically that they need the Medicaid in order to for their medical care or in order to have their waiver, if they have a waiver, and they have to have a gross annual income under the threshold amount. And for this year in Ohio, that amount is $46,314. Sounds like a lot of money, and it is. And so basically they're saying is that somebody who's on SSI can keep their Medicaid under 1619B, even if they go up to a work income of $46,314. So as you can see, they want individuals to keep their Medicaid because people were, when they were asking them why they weren't going back to work, and it was mainly not because of the money, they weren't going back to work because they needed their Medicaid. The other thing is that the resource limit still stays at $2,000 because remember, they're SSI eligible, they're just not getting a payment. So they have to stay within the $2,000 asset limit. 1619B is a huge benefit, and we do have several people that are using it, so it does work. All right, I was talking about the Medicare coverage. So they do have the extended period of Medicare coverage. So as long as an individual has a disabling condition, still meets the Social Security rules, Medicare coverage can continue for up to 8.5 years after returning to work at an SGA level. So if you start working at SGA level, they stop your check. Your Medicare can continue for about 8.5 years, including the 9-month trial work period. So Social Security will send you a notice saying when your Medicare is expected to end, to kind of make sure that you know that the Medicare will, so that make sure that they have Medicaid, make sure that they have other insurance. They're thinking that if people are working full-time at jobs, that they may be able to have work insurance, and so they won't need the Medicare. If an individual is still receiving a Title II disability check, then Medicare coverage continues anyway, as long as the premiums are paid, if due. So if they were to get their SSDI check back, Medicare continues. If they don't get their SSDI back, then their Medicare will end at the end of the 8.5 years, which does include the trial work period. So it does give several years of having some Medicare coverage, even though they may not be getting an SSDI benefit anymore. All right, next. All right, it's a lot of information. SSI and SSDI, they look alike, they sound alike, but as you can see, they're not alike. The rules are different. How they process them are different. And so that ends up with what me and Latosha do. We are doing benefits analysis summaries, and we do a comprehensive report that contains specific and detailed information about an individual's benefits and how these benefits are affected by employment. So the benefit summary analysis should analyze the benefit specific earning goals or range of earnings and contain all of the following components. We have to verify or confirm all of the benefits received by Social Security, by Jobs and Family Services, by HUD Housing, SNAP food assistance, whatever the benefit they may get, we verify that. Then we have to confirm what the individual's earning goal is, how much they want to earn, or if they know they have a job, how much they're going to earn, how many hours they're planning on working. And then we discuss on how those specific earning goals will affect all of the individual's benefits, and give them a chance to understand you're going to make this much money, but your SSI is going to go to this. You always have more money working than not working with SSDI and with SSI. So we always try to enforce that so that our individuals understand that working is a good thing. Identification of any specific work incentives that can be used, and then recommendations for employment services that could help the beneficiary achieve the specific earning goals and options for resolving any benefits issues. OOD is very much a agency that individuals can tap into. They will allow the individual who's got the OOD services to have a benefits analysis done. And that's a good thing, because they understand that when people go back to work, they want to make sure, how is it going to affect my benefits? And so that kind of is what they created our positions to kind of help do that. OD also has, they do have some staff that also do benefits analysis. So if it's not us doing it, it may be somebody that's, working with OD to do the benefits analysis. All right, next. So these are the resources, the Social Security Administration's Red Book. Then there's this Center for Medicare and Medicaid that you can go in there and get information about Medicare and Medicaid, the Ohio Medicaid, which basically is specific to Ohio, which the Center for CMS is basically the top dog, or the federal, and then there's Ohio Medicaid, which is state, and then there's the Disability Benefits 101. That's a very nice interactive program that you can use, where you can go in there and look at some of these incentives and go over them again. There is some worksheets that you can do that says, I make this much money, this is what my SSI is going to be for the month, so that you can kind of get a little bit more information about what specifics, how this specifically going to reduce your income. All right. So this is our contact information again. Like I said, the continuum of the SSDI is kind of it's several years. and it allows individuals to kind of try it, do well, and then it gives them sometimes safety nets that if they do go over, there are ways to try to get it back. Also want to point out that anytime Medicaid or Social Security denies, reduces, you do have the right to appeal, and we recommend that when decisions are made that you do appeal, and that allows you to give more evidence if needed to get those benefits back. All right. I think that's the last slide.
Yep, that's it. If
Yes.
anybody have any questions, please feel free to ask or put it in the chat.
All right, just looking to see if there was any in here. If you have any questions, you can add it to the chat. Those who are on, and you can add this to the chat, just curious. How old is your child? Like, are you looking at, is your child 16, 17, 18? Are you more in the 2022? Are you just looking at applying for Social Security? Or you already got a Social Security? If you can just put that in the chat box, real quick, if you have a certain age, just so we get an idea of where you're at in this process. Because Social Security you would be able to start when they turn, because some of you might be facing the 18, and some of you might have been working for a while already. I see Inez. Thank you, Julie. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording so we can just speak openly or ask our questions if you'd like. It gives me thank you. It gives me an idea of where you guys are at with your Social Security application, or whether you've been doing it a while, or you're just new to the process. I thank you, Latosha and Tammy, before I close the recording. Just thank you for your presentation for part 1 and 2. And let me go ahead and stop this, and we'll get into some questions.